About the Joe Rogan podcast.
No, I did not.
So, um, he signed with Spotify for
Right.
$100 million.
Wow.
That's crazy. It because he only used to be on YouTube. Well, he still is until like September 1st. It was only YouTube. I mean, Apple Podcasts. And at first, I was like, why is he suddenly doing this? I was like, why now? I mean, 100 million. Honestly, I thought that was kind of low because he's the greatest podcaster ever. And so, and then I was like, and then I read something today that said the reason why he made this sudden change is because he was trying to interview like different types of doctors with the like whole virus situation, but he's had some guests in the past that YouTube would demonetize and take down his videos of like not even like controversial, just like outside thinking, just like maybe this is why this. And so I was like, okay, he kind of settled for the 100 million. He's well off, like he's good. And he says he's like going to war against like these companies like Google, Facebook, YouTube. So I'm like, wow, this is like this is getting serious. This is getting peak news.
Right.
And it's yeah, I'm like very fascinated. And it's the first time where there's like been a um money item in these podcast contracts.
Right.
So it's just going to affect all the other podcasts. Like my other favorite podcast is like this music podcast called the Joe Budden podcast. That's it was number one on Spotify last year. And so they signed I think like a 10-20 million dollar contract
Right.
a couple years ago, and they're renewing this year. So they're probably like, whoa, it's like 100 million. They could easily get like 70-50 million or 70 or 50 million or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's just like Spotify is going all in the
Yeah.
podcast world.
I saw podcasts were like pretty prevalent on Twitter this week because I know a lot of girls, like I don't know if you know heard of this podcast, like they watch the Call Her Daddy podcast.
Yeah.
Like apparently like they made 500K last year alone, which is a lot for a podcast.
Yeah.
So like they're looking to make more and all that stuff. So I was just like, geez, like there's money to be made in the podcast.
There is. It's yeah, the Call Her Daddy situation is interesting. That I get both sides. Honestly, to me, it sounds like the two hosts, they weren't really friends. They basically Barstool Sports just got together these two girls.
Yeah.
And was like, just say something. And so in a way, Barstool took a risk because they took two kind of randomish girls, said you're gonna get paid 70,000 with like a lot of benefits, and they exceeded all those benefits and
Right.
started making 500,000, and that got in their head. They're like, okay, we're big time. And so it's the exact same situation in music where like a record label will sign this broke rapper for like, to the label it's like super cheap, but to that broke rapper is like, oh, like I'm down, like, but then that broke rapper gets big, and so it's a risk type of thing. When you're not making money, you're going to take that $1 million, and it's just the risk that the record label has to do. Yeah, so the Call Her Daddy situation is just a mess. I mean, I'm kind of on the Barstool side. I think one of the girls even like had a relationship with some of the office people in Barstool. So yeah, I mean, when you start like getting big time, when you sign like a low contract a couple years ago, you start hearing a lot of voices in your head. So yeah, it's getting big. I mean, I kind of thought radio was just gonna die, but it just like turned into something else. it didn't die. It's just like what do you call it? Reincarnated into something different.
Right.
Yeah, so I was just like, radio's not going to die. It's just moving somewhere else. So I thought that was really eye-opening. I was like, this is actually like an opportunity type of thing.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool. Let's see.